Query: what happens when a computer is set to its own devices for countless millennia? When no one is there to stop it after giving its final directive and assuming it can continue on with the power source it supplied, what's its endgame? Where does it end? How does it end? Is there even an end? Then again, what happens when that last order given is genocide? Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. You voted. I'm just saying, you brought this madness on yourselves, and on my own brain, because nothing spells twisting, winding paths of brain juice like the Vex. What I'm hoping to shed some light on today is a possible origin story for the Vex, where they came from, and how they may continue to act as they do. As a side note, if it sounds like it, yes, I am kind of recovering from a cold, which is actually where I've been for the last week. Yeah, it's been loads of fun. Per usual, gang, anything we're going to talk about today, though, is for speculation and for funsies. Though, if I'm wrong on this one, I don't want to be right. If anything, I hope this is a stepping stone for you all to take up your own theories, because the amount of paths I've been led down with this one is about as silly as carbon and silicon mixing. Wait, no, that's a thing now. Like the Vex, though, let's work backwards in time on this theory, starting with a Hydra by the name of Karia, Blade Transform. Realistically, this is the first time we see the Vex within our timeline within Destiny, as the Books of Sorrow take place quite a few millennia before we, as Guardians, exist. Crota was a baby at this point. Well, as baby as the Hive can get, I suppose. Raised to follow in his father's footsteps, one of the first things we find him doing is trying to make his own throne world. A throne world, to those unfamiliar, is where a major Hive can retreat once their physical body is killed off. They can then revive themselves from this realm and continue on with whatever they were doing previously. Anyway, Crota tried to make his own while hanging out in Oryx throne world. Trouble was, when he swung his sword and ripped open this world, in walked the Vex. Trust me, the first time I read that, it was a pretty epic spit take. Karia, the Hydra that would continue to fight the Hive for a long time, was born of the Vex need to understand what they were looking at in this weird new world that Oryx had made. Of course, this has started to make people think about theories or possibilities of the Vex time world and Hive throne worlds being linked in some way. I mean, rightfully so, with them inhabiting the same sphere of reality? I hesitate to use that word, of course. But Karia had instanced itself to the other side of the gate and built a holdfast to keep the way open. Karia's objective was to exploit the paracausal physics of Oryx's throne to become divine. It organized a series of test invasions. For 100 years of local time, the siblings fought the Vex. When the Vex came into the Sword World, they were inevitably annihilated. But when the Hive went into the Vex world, they lost too much of their power to win. Karia captured some worm larvae and began experimenting with them. Soon, Karia, Blade Transform, manifested religious tactics. By directing worship at the worms, Karia learned it could alter reality with mild ontopathogenic effects. Being an efficient mind, Karia manufactured a priesthood and ordered all of its subminds to believe in worship. Then it set about abducting and killing dangerous organisms so it could bootstrap itself to Hive godhood. For some Vex reason, Karia never attempted to introduce worm larvae into its mind fluid. Karia found a way to keep the Hive world open for further study. It started to play with worms, setting them as sources of power for the Vex in hopes of becoming more powerful because of this newfound idea of worship. This is the whole concept of the Vex at their basest. They try to understand and work through the new ideas and concepts that they are presented with. There's something sacred about their mind fluid that they don't want to have these outside organisms infect, however, and I think this is a bit of a key. Where's this mind fluid? Right here. It's the juice box. We'll talk about that in another video because that's science I don't have time to explain. Anyway, Oryx cleared out his throne world after a return visit from talking to the Deep, which is basically darkness incarnate, and decides to turn his throne world into the Dreadnought. All of this happens before he finds Karia again, and if you thought it weird that the Vex pop up within a Hive realm, well, it gets worse. This is also where the Vex really define their position as a combative force. By now, Karia knows it can't win. There's something pathological about the world inside Oryx's ship. It resists analysis with hot, dead spite. And Oryx himself, he's irreducible. He refuses to obey Karia's simulations. He crashes around sowing chaos. He grabs subminds and compromises them with some kind of ontological weapon. Paracausal systems, very problematic. Karia's trying the religious tactics that evolved in the Hive manifold. But even on those terms, Oryx is strong, so strong. Karia won't be able to protect its gates much longer. The closest Karia's got to a simulation of Oryx is a best guess bootstrap. It's wrong. Karia is sure of that. It's Oryx minus the symbiote organism, minus the wings and morphs, minus the weapon, minus the power. No good for anything. Karia manifests the simulation anyway, just to see what happens. Karia samples the Taox intelligence retrieved from the Awman gate. They're useful names. It feeds them to the simulation. Karia shuts down its weapons and puts all its spare resources into sending telemetry to the Greater Vex. There will be points in space and time where this data is vital. There will be great projects undertaken in the study of this ontological power, this throned space. Karia is unable to understand paracausality within this scene just yet. The weapons that Oryx uses against the Vex are seemingly unknown and hard to understand by Karia's account. It understands that it can't win against these kinds of weapons and decides to fold up, send information around to the other Vex, and hope that information is enough to cause issue on the Hive at a later date. Both of these forces, the Hive and the Vex, don't understand each other, but both are trying their hand at doing so. As Oryx says, "I've met a worthy rival. They want to exist forever just as I do, but I don't understand them." With the information passed over to the other Vex, now they have millennia to process this information, to think about what it might be that they need to do against the Hive, knowing that there is this fearsome force that is out there that can use powers they can't yet understand. That and the last dare that Oryx leaves Karia with. "You will never be what I am. Simulate me, wretch. Calculate the permutations of my divinity. Compute the depth and the shape of my throne. Render my shadow on the stone of 10,000 graveyard worlds. It will never be enough. I hold the tablets of ruin. I speak to the deep. Not with a galaxy of thinking matter could you encompass me. Behold. Unknown. Enigma. Shortfall. The unknown of the tablets of ruin. The enigma of the deep. The shortfall of not having minds the size of planets just yet to compute all the possibilities that Oryx could present. So now that we've established that the Vex can go through a type of identity crisis almost on the regular, the question is how they even came to this base understanding of how these alternative fields work, minus the squiggly wormy worship. Should totally put that on a shirt. Anyway, as promised, let's move backwards through time to the only force that, to me, seems to line up with what we've been presented with so far. And that's the Awman. Attention. Perimeter security units attend. Stand by to assimilate new imperatives. Gland 60 proof assimilation liquor or face immediate non-compliance taxation. The Dakawa Ministry of War is now online and true. In radial year 989, Group 3, our clients in the Dakawa nest salvaged an interstellar spacecraft. Hull isotopes date the craft's construction 24,000 years ago, around the same time the Fundament system dropped out of contact with our amiable Awman. Semantic Spike L, Praga. Mercenary explorers, disposable class, discovered an organism frozen in stasis deep within the hull. She claims to be Taox, member of a proto-hive species. During debriefing, she provided records of the fall of Ammonite civilization and vital intelligence about the motives, biology, and leadership of the Hive. Negative reinforcement bomb.axon 8x8 inflict. Over the past century, perimeter security units of the Awman status army have failed to halt Hive incursions on 17 separate worlds. All species in the Awman face extinction. Positive reinforcement reward.axon 11xvv2 inspire. Decapitate, defer, promote Dakawa strategic dicta for victory against the Hive. Identify supreme Hive leadership organisms Arash, Zathona, and Zero. Target these entities with maximum theater overkill. Sadometric release authorized. Prosecute targets whenever they manifest. Hive cohesion will crumble. Total victory over the Hive will be achieved by clean sweep, genocide. Enact impulse, Endura, Vindicator. The Hive were on a rampage, and it didn't seem like they were going to be slowed down easily. That is, until they met the Dekawa, a member of the amiable Akumene, a collection of at least dozens of races around the galaxy. One of these races happened to be one that the Hive had overcome earlier, called the Ammonites, which were the ones that seemingly worked with the Traveler above the original Hive origin world of Fundament. Just some brief summation, it's mostly to indicate that this isn't the first time either force has encountered the other, but now the Akumene might be able to get some answers and some revenge for what had killed one of their allied races. The battle waged on for an unknown amount of time, the Hive stalled out by the forces of the Akumene, helped by the information given to them by Taox. We'll get to her later, I promise. Seemingly overnight, however, the Akumene started to be pushed back. Emergency imperative. All militarized units attend. Gland 120 proof fight or flight encoding or face certain catastrophic defeat. The Akumene Crisis Council is now online and true. Attention, as of radial 990 Groove 0, the Hive has launched a staggering counterattack across the Spinward frontier. Perimeter, militia, and shock fleets report total casualties. We anticipate total Akumene disintegration extinction within 220 years. The Hive entity, Oryx Arash, is deploying a paracausal ontopathogenic weapon that infects and subverts Akumene forces. The weapon operates on individual targets. Targets are abducted and returned as compliant Hive slaves with inexplicable and physically illegal abilities. All Akumene clients should immediately devote all economic and cognitive resources to a countermeasure. Fight hard. We stop the Hive here or see our galaxy devoured. Enact Impulse 10/10 Abiyard Berserker. And so it went. The Akumene being swallowed up by the fires of combat after 1,140 local years. Nowhere except within the Books of Sorrow are they now remembered. Because of this, we as Guardians are not able to piece back the last pieces of the Vex origin. Are you starting to see? Within the messages we've seen above is a type of code. This code seems to play similar to that of a computer, or at least would be played out by a type of machine that would encode these messages and send them out amongst the Akumene Council. We have such similar machines with that of our war minds, the largest of which being Rasputin, and his language doesn't seem far from this type of encoding either. It's just a different type of language. Further, the use of liquids by this computer, where the Vex are constantly referred to having mind fluids, well, it's a small tie back, if nothing else, that might be significant. So now, this computer that the Akumene have had in place to help calculate and configure their war effort is left on to continue to do so, fighting against an enemy that has long wiped out the races of the Akumene. But no one is there to press the off switch. It continues to calculate a way to stop the Hive, and eventually, after a long period of time, it finds a way to manipulate time. This is backed up by what Xivu Arath, one of the sisters of Oryx, says about the Akumene people. They are lords of matter and physical law. Just to sum this up so far, the Vex are able to travel through time, with an ultimate goal to our knowledge so far of fitting some kind of pattern, which is another topic in and of itself. But you could say that a pattern is otherwise a program, and would have to follow a set or law that's put in place. AI and calculating machines can make small deviations over time to fit this program. If it can't, then the algorithm and extra code that it absorbs is thrown out. They seem hung up on the initial idea of what the Hive are, and to continue to gain more understanding of everything and anything they see. The Akumene seem to be able to use physical law and matter to their express will, with control over their ideas through uses of liquor or liquids, giving positive or negative reinforcement through these ideas. No, we're not talking about the radiolarian fluid inside the Vex. That's a completely different topic. But what is on the same topic is Taox, and the information she could have been able to supply the Akumene. Here's a crash course on Taox, and all I can say in the best way possible is try to keep up, only because Taox and her history is a topic in and of herself. Taox wrote a letter to a rival kingdom, which basically set in motion the death of the kingdom she worked for, so long as she could be a part of and be protected under the secondary kingdom. Arash, the name of Oryx, before taking the king morph to become a king in the Hive, and before becoming Oryx, was a target of this kingdom. This also included Arash's two sisters, Sathona and Zero. After several years, the three sisters resurfaced, now under the guidance of the worm gods, and Taox fled to the atmosphere, where she found and allied herself with the Ammonites. She witnesses the death of Oryx on a moon, where they were to parley for peace, only to have Oryx seemingly pop back up later on through some means, giving her an idea of the Hive throne worlds, or at least information that they can resurrect themselves somehow. All of this information on the sisters, the possibility of these throne worlds, and how Oryx came back is taken to the Awman Council after the fall of the Ammonites. All this information is placed within the Awman computers for its consideration to figure out a way to kill off the Hive, even the younger versions of the sisters. And what was the simulation that Karia, the Vex that fought the Hive for the first time, pulled up? A simulated Arash, the first form of Oryx. This computer that the Awman used to fight against the Hive and whatever else might have threatened them over the course of their years of existence is now left on, calculating this information and ideas of these sisters, of the Hive as a whole, to question its very place in its galaxy, to learn, understand, and simply stay alive, fitting its way of life into a pattern or program that it can slowly deviate and learn from to fit its way of existence. It has data pertaining to physical laws of matter and space, and now it's just left to compute these over the course of time. That's all this computer has left to consider all that time, wondering. This computer could very well be the basis for the Vex, learning how to manipulate time, the forces around it, with this information that's been programmed inside of it over millennia, thanks to the many species of the Awman. It creates many minds that work underneath it, constructing new ways to collect new information, all for the ultimate goal of possibly saving the collective of the Awman, a collective it has no idea is wiped out, because once again, someone didn't press the off switch, indicated by the fact that Karia was able to pull that information from an active gate. Or is it simply developing time in order to go back in time after it has fully developed an active defense? I also find this to be an interesting parallel, with Rasputin having its final command being defense, and the Awmanes being set to attack. Regardless, there are similarities between the computer that the Awman use and the Vex, namely Karia. Both are programmed to know when there is an end in sight and when to gather and send information. Both are in touch with Taox information about the early Hive. Both know about the possible space that the Hive inhabit in their throne worlds. There's too many similarities to simply overlook. So, there you have it. Oryx could be the one responsible for creating the Vex, in a way. He may have killed the beings within the collective, but not the whole of its civilization. It also makes me wonder how many other possible situations like these could pop up, if nothing else, over the course of the Hive's crusade, especially with the other traveler-touched civilizations like the Awman. Not all the races we encounter seem to be as advanced as the Awman, but I would doubt this would be a one-off example. But hey, tell me what you guys think of this theory. I know it's out there, I know it's pulling from a lot of different places, and just like the Vex, it bounces all over the place. But that's the kind of mentality I feel we have to have when dealing with a race of time-traveling space robots. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you can't think of anything to say, leave the phrase, squiggly wormy worship, just because I should totally put that on a shirt. You know the rest, like, dislike, all that, but if nothing else, thank you so very much for listening. I've been Beard Grizzly, and I'll see you all next Spacetime Guardians, and hopefully not quite as stuffed up sounding. After all, the origins of the Vex are just the beginning of understanding what they are. Take care.